Are you sitting on your daily commute thinking longingly about your next holiday? Are you filled with so much wanderlust that you've got no idea where to go next? Or have you got your next trip booked and in the bag and you're looking for tips and tricks to make it all go smoothly? Then, welcome to the TRAVELUST Podcast. Join me, Sam Sparrow, every fortnight as I chat to the people who have built their life around a desire to experience the world. As a travel blogger and wannabe professional city breaker, I'm nosy, and we get deep into travel memories, favourite destinations, and tips to make your next trip go with a bang. On the podcast today, I'm talking to Ellie from thewanderingquinn.com, who always seems to be away in an exciting destination. We chat about spending the summer holidays in Wales as a child and growing up adventurous, which led to working at camp leaders in the USA in her late teens. That fueled an unshakable passion for travel, which has seen Ellie go all around the world as a solo traveller. We also chat about striking a balance between well-being and travel and fitness whilst on the road. Ellie has so many perspectives on so many places, you'll definitely get some inspiration from her stories. Remember to tweet me at Sam R. Sparrow with the hashtag TheTravelUst with your favourite travel tips and memories and your perspective on what we discuss. You can find even more travel content on my website asthesparrowflies.com along with all of the podcast episodes. Are you packed? Then let's go. So I am here with the gorgeous and wonderful Ellie from The Wandering Quinn. Ellie is an awesome travel blogger who I have actually met in the flesh, which is amazing because so many of the people I'm speaking to I haven't met before. But Ellie, do you want to tell everyone about yourself?
Yeah, so hello and thank you for having me today. It's good to be speaking to you. My name's Ellie and I have a travel blog called The Wandering Quinn. I'm like a 27-year-old, live in London, just kind of balancing full-time work, a blog, travel, social life, all that kind of that thing, all that jazz.
Amazing. That's I think that whole being 27, living in London, kind of living your life and doing your thing. I always look at your Instagrams.
Oh yeah,
and kind of follow your travels and all the different places you just like wake up and take yourself off to, and I go, oh my god, that life, just having that in your bones, it's just the best. It always looks like you're having the best fun.
Yeah, it is good. And I mean, I'm so lucky that, well, I say lucky, but I've put myself in this position, I guess. I don't really have any commitments to anyone or anything really. So yeah, I can just be like, today I'm just going to explore here, and today I'm going to get a train here. So yeah, I can just get up and do that. And then if I don't want to and I want to stay in bed all day, I can also do that as well.
I don't think I've seen very often where you've had an off weekend. You're always out exploring.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a good balance of maybe like having one day that's a bit more chilled on the weekend and then one day that's either exploring London or going somewhere else. Because I think if you try and pack both days full, it can get a bit exhausting. But yeah, I try and keep a good balance of it as well.
You definitely inspire me too, because often I get to the weekend, I'm like, all I want to do is sit in my pants. But I also work full time as well.
Yeah.
And if I don't use my weekends, then you lose them. And I saw the other day when you were in Dover at the White Cliffs, and I went to university there, and I was like, oh my God, why am I not just getting up and getting on a train and going somewhere? So you've absolutely inspired me to take some more trips at the weekend around the UK.
Good.
So you've clearly got adventure and I guess a lust for kind of excitement and seeing new things in your blood.
Yeah.
What was your earliest travel memory?
To be honest, it's really hard when I think back, because when I was younger, my parents didn't travel. I didn't travel. I went on a couple of European holidays, when I was like 13, 14, but nothing, overly kind of exotic. I was thinking about this before, and my dad moved to Wales when I was 10 years old. So every school holiday I used to go and stay with him, and they had a farm, and, I'd go and leave my mum for like the 6 weeks holidays, day one, go to my dad's, come back 2 days before I was due to go back to school. So I think in that sense, I kind of got a lot of adventure from that. And although I was always either with my mum or my dad, I was very much used to just being like, see ya, I'm packing a bag, I'm going to dad's, and then, repack my bag and go back to my mum's again, ready for school. So I think that
So
did
you were
probably
really,
happen.
yeah, I was going to say you were really used to just packing up your
Yeah,
life for a period of time.
definitely. I've been packing a bag. Even when I think back, I used to be like 12 and I used to pack my own bag. So I've been packing the bags for a long time.
It was always really exciting when you were younger and you got to pack your
I
own
know.
suitcase.
Yeah. I remember taking this huge suitcase, like this yellow suitcase, down to my dad's for the school holidays. It was literally huge. You could probably go away with it for like a fair few weeks. God knows what I actually packed. But I always just used to love it and just take so much stuff with me.
Oh, that's so exciting. So I know that, so I was perusing your blog,
Yes.
which is one of my favourites. And I know when I look at the list of all the places you've been, backpacking and a lot of solo travel, how did all of that come about?
So it sounds so cliche, but it's true that I broke up with a boyfriend when I was 19, and even when we were together, I did want to go traveling. I remember saying like I really want to go to Australia, and even prior to that, when I didn't go to university, but at one point I was really up for going to university, and I dragged my mum all around the country, and there was no way I was going to go to a university close to home. I really wanted to go, all the way up to kind of Liverpool and, go really far away. Not that far, but you know what I mean. And then I kind of realized that actually the reason I wanted to go to university was because I wanted to do something and I wanted to go away. And then I realized that going to university, not knowing what I wanted to study, probably wasn't the right chance to do that. So instead I went into full-time work, but then I split up with my boyfriend when I was 19. And I remember it was literally New Year's Day of 2010. And I just thought, I'm not staying in the UK this summer. And I'd been to Zante on like a girls' trip the summer before, and we'd been speaking to a lot of people that were working out there, and they were obviously working a season, and I was thinking, could I do that? But I knew that kind of thing really isn't for me. Like I like to party, but I'm not working at a bar until 6 o'clock in the morning all summer and drinking, and that's really not me. So I literally did type into Google, working a summer abroad, and then Camp America came up.
Oh, amazing.
And I applied for it that day, and then you go through a bit of a process. Your application goes in, and then you meet someone. I actually did it through Camp Leaders rather than Camp America, but it's the same kind of thing. You meet up with someone, they just like check that you're kind of a sane person, and then you put your application in, and then the camps look through. And I remember still, I think it was about February time that my application got accepted by a camp. And then by the May, so about 3 months later, I was flying, to the US to spend the summer in North Carolina. So that's when it all really kicked off. I
was going to say, that's so quick. That's like 5 months from kind of going, to, oh my God, I'm going to go do Camp America.
Yeah.
That's huge. And I think it's so interesting what you say, because I was sort of the opposite in that I did go to university, and I don't think I would have been brave enough to have gone, you know what, actually, I'm not going to go to university and I'm going to do something else, because it's just, you know what it's like. It's hammered in to, you go do your A-levels and you go to university and you do this. And I didn't even do the gap year. And what happened to me was I got on the train. And once you're kind of on that train of university and then a job, and then you meet the guy and get married and then you buy a house and then all of a sudden you go, yeah, okay, so long-term travel is definitely not really a thing that's going to happen in the next few years. You're in your mid-30s going, yeah, okay, so we'll save that for retirement then.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I can imagine.
And I do think, I'm not convinced that at 19 I was, I think back to what I was like as a 19-year-old. I'm not sure I would have been able to manage.
Yeah, that's it. I think it's definitely down to people's personalities as well at that age, definitely.
Yeah, so you went to Camp America, which I know people that have done Camp America or similar things like you did, and that just had the most wonderful time. So did that really spark off the kind of, right, that's it, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to travel as much as I can?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I even remember before I went to America saying to my mum, I'm going to go to Australia when I get back. And she was just like, okay, chill, Ellie. And I think, to be honest, it's something that when I was younger, I was always like changing my mind. One minute I wanted to do this, 1 minute I wanted to do that. I remember when I said I'm going to go to America, she was kind of like, oh, okay. Because I think before this, again, I was going to go to uni and I didn't. And then my boyfriend also for a bit lived up in Leeds and I was going to move to Leeds with him and I didn't. And then I remember thinking I'm going to move to Ireland. And then obviously that wasn't going to happen. So this is kind of something that I'm stuck at. I think even now she's still quite pleased that I have, well, not pleased, but surprised maybe that I've stuck at it. So yeah, she's like, just go to America, see how you get on and then come back. But yeah, it definitely fueled my wanderlust and travel bug, definitely. And I was there with mostly girls from the UK that I was working with, but there was a girl from Australia and a girl from New Zealand. And of course they were like, you have to come to Australia, you have to come to New Zealand. So as soon as I got back, that was it. And I did, so the work that we did, it was for 3 months. And yeah, I just had absolutely amazing time and I'd recommend it to anyone because you kind of, it's like travel, but safe travel in the sense that you've got someone looking after you. You've got someone, you know that you obviously you go over there with a job, and you do also get paid as well, which is great. And you've got that support system. And then afterwards, I did a couple of weeks of travel, some with the girls that I'd worked with. We went to like Miami and New York, and then I went over to LA on my own. So that was kind of like my first real kind of like solo travel, which now I think is I was 20 and I just flew to LA from New York on my own for 10 days and then flew back. And yeah, so as soon as I got home, I was like, right, I'm going to Australia.
Amazing. So I've not done any solo travel really. So I got to the ripe old age of 34 and have not done it. And I've thought about it a lot, and I think I will. And I have been inspired by people like you and Beverly from Pack Your Passport, who has obviously done a huge amount of solo travel. But I haven't done that, and I've got so much awe because all I've got is questions about what will happen. And I think that, and obviously like it's fine. But it's like the unknown really. And I love traveling and I love going to places, but I get really freaked out about, it's like I can wander around. It's the kind of sitting in restaurants and eating and that kind of stuff, and which is stupid. I should just get over it, and I will.
It's one of those things.
I'm going to do it. But clearly, like that opportunity of going out and then having the opportunity to travel solo, and that led to some of what I presume led to some of your backpacking trips. Yeah,
definitely. And I mean, I think on the note of solo as well, I think for me it's always been, especially then when I went to Australia just over a year later, it was kind of, and even now, even when I take a weekend trip here, sometimes and I book it solo, it's kind of like, if I wait for someone to come, then I probably won't go. And that maybe does sound really sad. So actually, in a way, maybe the fact that you never travel solo is kind of nice that you've always had someone to travel with.
Although sometimes travel, so I've done a lot of travel in recent times when I've been able to start traveling again with my husband, and he just has now had enough. He's like, we've been to 14 European cities in the last 2 years. I'm done now. So I'm like, right, okay. So I'm definitely going to have to just start traveling solo because I'm nowhere near done.
Actually,
so I think it has this plus side.
Sorry, did you go to Luxembourg? Were you going to go to, I know Luxembourg is a soft topic, so I apologise, but were you going to go there on your own?
On my own. So I was supposed to be going there on my own for the day to kind of dip my toe in of like, because I've stayed overnight for business in different places, but it feels different when you're not there for work and things like that. So I will go back to Luxembourg, and maybe by the time this goes out I would have rebooked to go to Luxembourg for the day. But there's lots of things on my bucket list that are just none of my friends or my husband are really bothered. So it's like, well, if I want to see these places, and it's exactly as you said, if I'm going to wait for someone to come with me, then I'm never going to go. And I think that's so true.
Yeah, it really is. And again, it's one of them cliche kind of travel quotes that goes around. But actually, when you kind of break it down to take it kind of out of a travel quote that you see online, it's the truth that you won't go. And even like little things like, sometimes I just can't be dealing with asking my friends, if I see cheap flights, for example, somewhere, I really can't be bothered to say to my friends, can you get this time off work? And then they might say no. And then I'll say, oh, well, it's just that the flight's them day. And then you kind of get steered down a route of going, well, why don't we go 2 weeks later? And then the flights may be more expensive. And you kind of think, oh, the point of me going was because the flights were cheaper. And so sometimes, I will just book stuff. I'm like, I've seen it, I want to go, I booked it. And then I'll say to people later, look, if you want to come, more than welcome to join. But if you don't, then I'm going to go anyway. And that kind of gives, friends the opportunity to come, but also not feel bad by saying no either.
Yeah, I think that's so true, actually. So I went away with Sophie and Beverly from Passport earlier this year. And we literally went, shall we go? Yes, book. Yeah. And that's because we're all of that mindset. We all love to travel, and it's never really a question. We just kind of do it and work it out later. But I think if you've got people that aren't necessarily into travel as much, they love a holiday, but they're not necessarily as into travel as much as maybe we are, then explaining the need for urgency sometimes around these things can be quite difficult.
Yeah, definitely. Like one of the girls, I actually met her from Instagram or Twitter, and now we're quite good friends as well, Liv. And she texted me on my lunch break last week, I think it was. And she said, I've seen flights to Belgrade for about £40. Do you want to go this weekend in November? Obviously it was November, so I've got no plans. I said, yeah. And then literally within half an hour, she was like, it's booked. And I was like, okay, here's the money. And it was like an hour process. And then I booked the time off work. And it was just, I said, this is great, because it wasn't hard work at all. It was just so easy. And now we're going.
Yeah, I think it is about finding your right travel partner, because in many ways my husband and I have similar tastes.
Yeah.
But in other ways he doesn't like, so I like to get up early so I can kind of see a place without loads of crowds and things like that, which is why I've managed to kind of be the only person on Charles Bridge in Prague and all of those kinds of things. Whereas if my husband could sleep in till 2 in the afternoon, he would. Now, he obviously doesn't do that when we go away, because I would divorce him. Yeah. When you're only there for like 48 hours, Definitely. It's like, can we please just get a move on? But I think, finding the ideal travel partner, if you are going to travel with someone, whether that's your taste in travel or how quickly you book things or budget, is just so important.
Yeah, definitely. No, it is. And then I think it's good that if you don't have that, or you can't find that all the time, then to be able to think, actually, no, I want to go there, so I'm going to do it on my own, is definitely good. And that applies for like a big backpacking trip. If anything, I think it probably applies for like a long trip even more so, because it's even harder to find someone that's going to travel the same as you necessarily, on the same budget for the same time frame. But it also applies for just a short weekend away as well.
Yeah. So so you've done all different types of travel. Like, I feel like you've ticked every box of every different type of travel you could do. And I know you've done the backpacking thing. I know more recently you've been doing quite a lot of city breaks that I've been following through Instagram, like excitedly just adding things to my bucket list. I didn't know that I wanted to go to Zaragoza until you went. And now I'm like, now I have to go there. Like, I know. I'm like, I need to stop following people on Instagram, I think, because it's just going to end up costing me so much money. But what's your favourite way of travelling? If the time was no object, what would be your favourite way of travelling?
I mean, I've definitely, the majority of the time I travel on a budget, and I have done, especially on, the longer backpacking trips that I've done, because for me, it's also always been once the money runs out, the trip has to end. I haven't had that. I can call mum or dad and ask for money. I know that it's all the responsibility is on me, and I'm really pleased with that, because I think that's a huge kind of character growing thing as well. And so, I mean, I always say, if I had like all the money in the world, or I won the lottery or whatever, and I was going to do a big backpacking trip, I still personally wouldn't stay in, really nice hotels all the time. I mean, that would obviously be nice now and again. But actually what I love in countries like Asia and South America is that kind of hostel vibe where you just meet people just from like a common room or in a bedroom. I'd probably always have my own room, because these days I do struggle in a dorm room because I do like my sleep. But yeah, that's what I love about travel, is that buzz.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually. Like, so this is coming from someone that has, again, I've never stayed in a hostel because I've never done like the long haul traveling thing. Yeah. So I've never stayed in a hostel until recently with Beverly and Sophie, but we had our own private room. So, and it was also a generator hostel. Oh, I don't think they can really be called a hostel, because they're just very nice.
They are. Yeah, I've stayed in a few.
Yeah, they're just a bit too nice to be classed as what I would consider to be a hostel. And I've often thought, like, I'm 34 now, I'm just not sure that I'm down with that hostel vibe. But actually, the mix of having a private room, if I was to go solo, but also having like lots of people around, I think that's a really lovely compromise.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's definitely something that I would look to do more now anyway, because you get the sleep that you need and you get that kind of privacy. And especially, if you are like taking your laptop with you and you want to do some like blogging and stuff like that, it's like you've got that more space to do that and you're going to get a better sleep. But if you want to meet people, then you can go down to the bar. And I always find that in hostels, like people on reception are just so friendly and so helpful. Like they'll give you a map as soon as you get there. They'll tell you where to go, give you loads of tips and things. And whereas a hotel receptions are often, they're a lot more professional and maybe they've got conference facilities and things like that. And so they're not all, maybe necessarily even like kind of tourist catered, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, sometimes they can be a bit sterile. Actually, I did really notice the difference when we stayed in Generator Hostel in Amsterdam, because the minute we arrived, it was like, here's a map. Do you want to hire bikes? You should probably buy a Metro card. You can buy them, the tram card. You can buy them from us. Like, here's the thing. This is what happens. And it was just really like, oh, wow, okay, this is awesomely helpful.
Yeah, and most people that work on the hostel receptions are kind of people that are traveling around that city, like to that country, and maybe just staying there for a few months as well, or they're travelers themselves, but that's their home city. So they're so, kind of enthusiastic about giving information and giving tips because, it's either their home city that they love or they're just visiting themselves and they love it. So, that's a really good plus for me as well.
So I've got just a slightly different tack before I'm going to start making you pick favourite destinations from all of the places that you've been to. But I know that you're, again, something I'm jaw-droppingly jealous about, that you're into kind of a fit and healthy lifestyle. And I noticed from your Twitter bio, and I know that when we're recording this, so we're recording this in the summer, but it's you're going to be listening to it in the autumn, but you're off to the Soul Circus Festival tomorrow.
Yes.
And I get the feeling that you try, or maybe you're not doing it on purpose and it's just part of who you are, to mix that love of travel and seeing places with that idea of having a fit and healthy lifestyle. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, kind of in the past, I'm definitely working on it a bit more recently because this year especially, I have been focusing a lot more on my fitness and a lot more on healthy eating and things like yoga and meditation. I've always kind of dipped in and out of over the last few years. When I traveled around Asia, I kind of, if there was a yoga class, then I'd try and do it, and I used to do it quite a bit. But it's something that I'm very interested in at the moment, and so I think it kind of makes sense to take that into my travels. And I mean, in terms of going on trips, I've had quite a few weekend trips recently. And even when I went to Georgia for a week, and I've just eaten so badly when I was there. And not even really badly, but a lot of these places are very carb heavy. Yeah. And so you come back and I feel like all the work that I'd been doing for the past few weeks in the gym and being good has just completely just disappeared. And I mean, even when I was in Asia, actually, I remember when I first went to Australia, I did put on quite a bit of weight because you kind of eat out a lot, and you'd be eating foods that you wouldn't normally eat at home that much, but because there's like you haven't got an adult looking after over you, it's like you can do it, and no one's kind of judging you. But I quickly realised that if travel was going to become like my lifestyle, and I was going to keep, especially when I was on longer trips. If I was going to stay on this trip, for a few months, I can't be like thinking, oh yeah, I'll just treat myself to dessert tonight, and I'll just treat myself to this, and I'll just treat myself to that. Because you can do that on a 1 week, 2 week holiday, absolutely. If that's all you're having within a year, you're only going to have like 1 or 2 holidays like that within a year. But if travel is going to become your lifestyle, then you kind of need to maintain that kind of slightly healthy eating, slightly fitness aspect to it, like as if you would in your normal day-to-day life.
Yeah, it's something I'm grappling with.
Yeah.
It is something I'm grappling with. I think the one plus side for me is that what I love to do most when I go away is walk cities.
Yes.
So often I'm clocking up. So I went to Lille for the day and I did 30,000 steps in one day. I mean, to be fair, I was absolutely shattered. but I did feel like I'd earned the beer and the waffles that I consumed while I was there. So that was okay. But I do think that you're right about making this a lifestyle. And I think it's really interesting watching you combine travel. So again, thinking about Dover was just, and Wales, when you just recently went hiking in Wales.
Yeah, they were very much.
And I was just, there you were with gym kit and hiking boots or trainers on, out to see something. And I was like, yeah, I never really think of doing that. I've got gym kit and leggings and stuff, but I always put jeans on and stuff like that and then get hot and sweaty. And I think, yeah, I mean, you could combine the two things and it would be awesome. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. No, I am. Well, firstly, I'm definitely a big walker. I think actually my name Wandering kind of is quite true to that I do walk and wander far. And then things like Wales. Yeah, I actually took that before I went to Wales. Yeah, I'd been going to the gym quite a lot. And I was quite happy with kind of like the fitness that I got to. And then I knew I was going to Wales for 5 days. And then I thought, actually doing these walks, that they are basically my workout for the day. And after all of those hills, my glutes definitely hurt after 2 days of walking hills when I got home. And Dover was the exact same thing, actually. I was kind of like, well, I'm going to do a walk instead of maybe going to the gym. And definitely with the putting the gym wear on instead of kind of jeans, I think that's also a really good point, because I think it kind of encourages you to kind of walk that little bit more, or just to take those steps if you're in kind of like trainers, or perhaps even walking boots rather than kind of sandals. It just does encourage you to do that a little bit more as well.
I love that. It's such a simple mindset change. But I clocked onto it when I saw your pictures on the White Cliffs of Dover, and I was like, yeah, that makes so much sense to me. And it's such a good mindset shift. So it's definitely a tip that I am going to try and take forward the next time I go away. Mm-hmm. So out of all of the incredible places that you've traveled to, like every corner of the globe, I feel like you've been to when I look at your list on your blog, what has been maybe your favorite region, or if you can't pick your favorite destination, like what has really stood out to you?
So, in terms of region, so I've done a fair bit of Europe now. I've kind of heavily travelled Southeast Asia, done a bit of the Middle East. I lived in Australia for 2 years, went to New Zealand and South America. So that is quite a lot, but it's not kind of everything. But I definitely, region-wise, Southeast Asia completely has my heart. I just absolutely love it. I'd say out of all the countries, it's such a cliche. I'm such a cliche. But Thailand probably is my favourite. I've been to Thailand 6 times in total now.
Goodness.
I know. One of them was quite just a short one at the end, but still got the passport stamps and was there for a few days. But I think Thailand, because after I went to America, I came home for just over a year, saved money, and then booked this round the world trip for a year. And my first stop was Thailand. And so I literally arrived in Bangkok. I was 21 at this point. I literally had no idea. Thinking back now, I kind of think I was crazy to book it. I'm definitely glad I did, but I had no idea what my thought process was. I was just like, everyone goes to Thailand before Australia, so I'll do it. And I arrived on Koh Sam Road with this big suitcase that I couldn't even carry. And I was like, I'm not going to be going off the beaten track in Thailand. I literally remember telling someone that. Little did I know that everywhere in Thailand is off the beaten track. And a few days later, I was replacing my my suitcase for a backpack. And then I got on a boat down to the islands, which kind of got terminated at an island that I didn't want to go to. And I had to hike through this forest. And then we had to get this 4x4 Jeep through this forest, and it was kind of I just think, and I thought I wasn't going off the beaten track.
That's because I just didn't know. Fire.
Yeah. And I think that really kind of sparked, as much as America did definitely spark my initial kind of travel bug, I think Thailand really sparked the fact that the world is such a big place. Because before that, I had only been, to Turkey for a holiday, Zante for a holiday, and then, a few places in Europe for holidays, and then to America. I'd never even eaten Thai food. I got to Thailand, so I literally didn't know what to order because I'd never eaten Thai food before. So that was my biggest eye opener, and I spent a month there and I just absolutely loved it. And then, I've been back to Asia a few times since then. So for me, it's just so much fun. I just love it. It's just fun.
And are you planning to go back for time number 7?
Oh, I'm sure it will. It will be in the future, I'm sure. I'm not in any rush to go back just yet. But when I see people there, I just think, oh, I could just go back and live there. Even when I, like last year at some point, I think it was winter. And I said to my friends, like, why don't we just go and just buy a shack in Thailand and just live there for a bit, you know?
It's so funny. I've been talking to Lucy, who's also been on this podcast, and she also fell for Thailand pretty hard and lived there for a long time. And I think, so for me, it's never really been anywhere in my mind that I've thought I want to go. Like, I'm desperate to do South America and to do a lot of South America. And I went to Costa Rica, sort of in Central America, and I was like, no, this is it. I need to be in this area always.
Yeah.
But actually, the more I talk to people that have been to Asia and Thailand specifically, it has made me reevaluate kind of the feelings about why I wasn't that bothered about Thailand, actually. So I'm not sure I'll be getting there anytime soon.
No,
but I definitely, that island life for a bit definitely appeals.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I guess, again, I've been quite lucky that every time I've gone, it's been on a backpacking trip rather than kind of like a 2-week holiday. And I have, most of the time, I think at least 3 or 4 of the times I've been there, I've used pretty much like my whole month visa, just kind of going around the islands as well. And that's definitely the kind of way to do it. And what I love about Thailand is you can do it in so many different ways. I mean, I definitely have not done it in the luxury kind of style just yet. So maybe that's a reason to go back in the future. But I've definitely done it from like the partying side a fair few times, and just that island life, bungalow by the beach, just kind of life, which I just love.
Oh, stop. It's just too nice.
I know, now I want to go back. Maybe I will go back soon.
So out of all the places that you visited, is there anywhere, perhaps not that you didn't like, although if there is, then please do share, but that perhaps wasn't quite as you anticipated?
Yeah, so South America in general was very difficult. So I spent 3 months in South America at the start of 2015. And prior to this, the year before, I'd spent the 5 months in Southeast Asia for the first time, like following being in Australia. And I did very much go to South America with the fact that, I'd seen lots of people on Instagram, they were traveling in South America. And I kind of just thought, I mean, it was basically the language barrier that I don't speak Spanish and I still don't, and I didn't then. But I just kind of thought, well, I'm sure people will speak English there. I mean, I definitely didn't expect, people to, a lot of people speak English, but I thought within tourism people will, because a lot of people do go there. But actually they don't. So
that's so interesting, because do you know what? I have a bit of rough Spanish, sort of, maybe. Unfortunately, I learnt German at school, which is pretty much the most unhelpful language for travel, basically, because everyone in German-speaking countries will just speak English to you anyway, broadly. So do you think that if anyone's thinking about doing a proper trip around South America, that's something that learning Spanish is a must-do?
Yeah, 100%. Although it's quite hard, because over here, I've thought about it recently, like doing some Spanish lessons, but the Spanish that they speak in South America is very different to the Spanish that they speak in Spain. And, I mean, it's such a big continent, and each country is so huge that actually, they do have different dialects and everything. But generally, if you know a bit of Spanish, everyone will be able to understand
some of those countries. Yeah, and some of those countries that also speak Portuguese.
Yeah, so Brazil's Portuguese.
Brazil,
yeah. So they can understand Spanish, but or something like that. Yeah, but it's definitely, I would definitely recommend it. And even just for little things, like I definitely felt like in some places I wanted to ask, more questions about things, and there's just such a language barrier. And, I mean, I did it for 3 months without speaking any Spanish. So it is definitely possible. And I did pick up quite a few words, towards the end. I actually probably left knowing more than what I realised. But you kind of just have to, because I was travelling solo there as well. And so, South America was quite difficult, but mainly for that reason.
Yeah, I think that I went to Costa Rica. That's quite different. It's very chilled in Costa Rica. A huge amount of the people there, whether they are working in tourism or not, are speaking English. They put an enormous amount into their education system. They don't have a standing army, so they just put it all into education, which is kind of awesome. And everyone, the people that are taking you around on tours around the rainforest are studying bats for their PhD in the off season. It's just crazy. Wow. And I'm definitely aware that I got the bug for it, and I was like, oh, I just love Central America. I would definitely want to go see South America. And I have a bit of a romanticized view, I think, of what that will be like.
Yeah.
And I do think that traveling in South America it can be quite difficult. I think that's what I've heard. And I think that's what I understand.
Yeah, definitely. And it's also what I also found really surprising is that there are also a lot of people traveling South America, but a lot of them are South Americans, which is amazing that, because they're maybe from Chile, but they're actually traveling around Argentina or Bolivia, Peru, which is fantastic that they're, exploring their own continent, I guess. And that's just like us exploring Europe. But they too do not speak that good English generally. So actually, even when it came to meeting people, it was quite difficult because we just had that language barrier, basically.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and definitely for any listeners that are putting kind of South America on their list, it's definitely something to bear in mind to kind of do some research.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you, and I'm sparked off by the conversation I had with Lucy from wanderloose.com about safety when traveling. She was talking about traveling to Arabic countries and how safe it actually in reality really is. How safe did you feel traveling solo in South America?
So I felt very safe, but the men there are quite leery, and I think it's very much just in their nature to be very stary and to kind of shout a bit anyway. Very similar to what I experienced in a few Middle Eastern countries as well. So, and I, rather than getting kind of, I definitely, you do feel intimidated in some situations, but I just get really angry. So I will very much just like shout stuff back. And in some ways I was like, I'm pleased that I don't speak Spanish because I can't understand what you're saying. And I'm kind of quite glad. But yeah, so I 100% felt safe. And even in countries like Bolivia, I was quite aware of, like maybe there might be pickpocketers and things like that. And I'd also heard of some things in Santiago, which is the capital of Chile. So I kind of had my guard up on my stuff and made sure I didn't take out, too many valuables or anything. But actually there was nothing, and I felt really safe. But as a solo female traveller, again, I was like 25 then, so, quite young, blonde, white, on her own. I definitely got a fair few stares and catcalls and comments.
Yeah, the blonde thing's super interesting actually, because and my mum is the same colouring as me, which is basically translucent and super blonde. It's ginger Jean. That's what we deal with. And when I've travelled, so when she's travelled to Marrakesh and I've been to Egypt, it's been really interesting the reaction that we've had. I've had a lot of touching of hair and stuff like that. And I could feel quite intimidated by that, but I sort of suck it up because I feel like, we're British. So like I wouldn't, if I saw someone on the tube that had really different or awesome hair, I wouldn't touch it because it's the British mindset.
Exactly.
But I kind of think that in some situations it does feel a bit leery and you kind of go, I'm not sure about that. But in others, it's kind of like, yeah, actually, interestingly, the first time this happened to me, so I travelled to Australia when I was 11 with my grandparents, and we flew on Singapore Airlines, and I had really long, quite bright strawberry blonde hair, and all of the air stewards and the female air stewards were just obsessed with my hair. And it was, and at age 11, I was like, well, this is weird because everyone teases me for my hair at school. This is kind of a bit crazy. And I remember on the trip over, like the first flight, which was just so long, they actually just came and sat next to me and were like, putting braids in my hair and things like that.
Oh my gosh.
And so I got my first taste of, people being a bit like funny about my hair. So knowing
that you kind of look, like look different, I guess, and that people don't, you know, from other countries haven't seen that kind of colour hair before. And I definitely, you know, part of me kind of thinks, okay, I understand, you know, they may not have seen like blonde people before, but then I, you know, in most of the country, or all the countries, in fact, that I've been to, I haven't been, although I've done quite a lot, I haven't been like majorly off the radar. You know, I think, well, by now, you know, you probably have seen a white blonde girl before.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting, and definitely a massive education for me when at some point in my life I finally make it to South America. You never know what might happen. So you've already talked about, so by the time this podcast goes out, I'm sure that you would have been on a few more trips. And I know you've already talked about going to Belgrade, which I'm super excited about you going to, because it's a destination myself and my husband really want to go to, because his granddad lived in Belgrade.
Oh, okay. I remember you saying, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to follow along with that. But what else do you have in store for the rest of this year?
So in 2 weeks' time, this time in 2 weeks, I would have just landed in Ireland. So I've just booked, the bank holiday weekend in August, just a little trip around Ireland, and I'm hiring a car, which I've never done before. I mean, I can drive, and I've like driven my mum's car. That's what I did for Wales, but I've never hired a car before, so I feel quite grown up rather than getting public transport. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to Jersey in September, and then I'm going.
Oh, interesting!
Yeah,
I've been thinking of Jersey. My parents love Jersey and Guernsey, and I've never been, so I'm quite interested in going to Jersey.
Yeah, it's actually a press trip with Visit Jersey, so that should be
nice.
Yeah, I think hopefully they've got some exciting things lined up, and again, should be hopefully driving around there. So this the last few months has been obviously, I mean, it was only Wales that I went to, but I kind of just made sure that I got a car. I just borrowed my mum's car rather than getting the train there, because I've got family there. And just doing a bit of driving around there. Now I'm going to drive a little bit around Ireland and then do the driving in Jersey. So that's kind of nice, because I've never really approached travel in that way. I've always done it kind of by public transport, I guess, obviously in other countries. So that's exciting. And then, I'm going to Belfast, because I've got a friend that's moved there. So we're doing a girls' trip to Belfast, and hopefully see some other places in Northern Ireland as well. Then I'm going to Belgrade, and then hopefully going to Riga in Latvia for the Christmas markets with the girls as well.
Yeah, that's definitely on the top of my list. Yeah, and just the buildings and everything. I'm a sucker for architecture, so that's why I love some of these European cities. I particularly like the kind of Flemish style, so I've really enjoyed Lille and Amsterdam and Brussels.
I like that. Yeah,
so it's really cool. So you've got lots going on, basically.
Yeah.
And I know that you live in London now, but oh God, correct me if I've got this wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. But you're originally from is it Northampton?
Yes, I'm actually from a small town. It's kind of in Northamptonshire. It's called Daventry, but I just tell people Northampton because they're more likely to know where it is. But most people still don't really know where it is.
So I've been asking people to tell me their kind of what would be their kind of one thing to do if they were visiting your home city. Now, obviously, your home city is London, so I would really love a London tip, because I know you're always out and about. But it would be really interesting if you had a tip for anyone that was going to come and visit kind of your home city where you're from.
Okay. Oh gosh. Well, Northampton is probably most famous for they've got a good rugby team, the Saints. They're good. So a lot of people probably visit Northampton maybe to see the Saints play, or to kind of go to an away game there. Also, Alan Carr, the comedian, he is from Northampton, and he always talks.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's actually quite funny when you. I've seen him live, I think, before, and he kind of, he does talk about Northampton, and again, a bit like I do, the fact that not many people know where it is or what there is to do there. And he always talks about the shoe museum. They're quite famous for this shoe museum, although I've never been.
They've got a shoe museum.
Yeah.
That's awesomely niche.
Yeah, I think it's. I'm sorry.
So God, I was going to say that's the kind of thing that there's somewhere that's got a pencil museum as well in the UK. I can't remember where it is now. I'm going to have to look that up. But yeah, I kind of like a niche museum.
Yeah. So I mean, I'd never been, but So yeah, I think that's what I'd say. I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of really nice areas around Northampton. The city, it's not even a city because it doesn't have a cathedral, even though it's the size of a city definitely by now. So it's a town. There isn't that much to do in the town, but it's got some like gorgeous countryside around it. Like even just driving from Northampton to Daventry, where I'm from, it's just rolling hills around you. It's absolutely gorgeous. So I would say maybe, go to the countryside, like Northamptonshire. I'm also quite close to Warwickshire, and that just countryside is gorgeous.
Lovely. And what about London? I know you've been doing a lot of exploration of London recently.
Yeah. One place that I always tell people to come actually is Hampstead, which is where I live, because it's just gorgeous. It's a completely different side of London. It's only in zone 2 and it's just like 3 stops from Camden, so not far at all. But once you get here, like they call it like a village because it basically does feel like a little village. And there's like a nice little high street and all the houses are really nice. And then you can go up to Hampstead Heath, which is, again, literally just rolling countryside, to be honest. It's huge. I still haven't explored it all and I live so close to it. And then from Parliament Hill, you can see all over London. It's just got the best view. And people, all year round, people go up there. But in the summer, people like to take their picnics and sit on the hill and it's just really nice.
Yeah, I love that. I really like Primrose Hill actually as well.
Yeah,
That's
it's the same kind of view, but just from further back, really.
Yeah, and I discovered I hadn't really explored Greenwich, and very recently I went up to Greenwich Park and up to the observatory, and the view there was stunning.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah, so I always tell people, like, don't pay for a view. There's lots of really good London views that you don't have to pay, like I think it was like nearly £40 to go on the London Eye now, which blew my mind.
Yeah.
And it's £28 to go up the Shard. So like, don't do that. Go to Hampstead. You'll get an awesome, awesome London view.
Yeah, although talking of free views as well, the Sky Garden, which is in the Walkie Talkie building in the city, that is free. You do have to book like quite far in advance, but that's amazing. That's really good as well, and it's free. So
I've still not been up there yet, but my plan is they run yoga up there. So my plan is to do a sunrise yoga session up in the Sky Garden.
Yeah, well, let me know when you go.
We should go because it's still. The problem is it's so early, and I live out in Zone 5. I like to call it Narnia, where I live, and it's quite tight for me to get there for 6. So I need to time it with staying closer into London, so that I can get there. But I've heard that the sunrise yoga there, I think it's like a tenner or something, is just absolutely phenomenal. So that's another good tip as well. You can often combine yoga. There's a really good place in Peckham as well, I think, where you can do sunrise yoga on the rooftop and get a good different view. So before we wrap up, I'd love to know, I mean, you've given so many amazing travel tips throughout all of this, which I'm going to be fiercely making notes on. But what if someone was new to traveling and they just wanted to kind of give something a go, what would be your top travel tip?
I'd say I think a lot of people obviously do get worried about going places on their own, or even, if you'd never travelled and maybe you went with a friend that never travelled either. I just say do that little bit of research. I think, I always research in, like, if I'm going to fly into an airport, I always like work out how am I going to then get into the city? And obviously you can always get taxis from somewhere anyway, but normally I travel on a budget, so I don't want to get a taxi. But even then, if it's in a different country, you might be a bit scared of, or you might not. Oh, no, that's a bit of a bad thing. I'm going to start that one again.
That's right.
So I always look into how I'm going to get from the airport into the city. So generally I'll try and look to see if there's like a shuttle bus or a train. And just by doing that bit of research before, it always calms me down because I know how I'm going to get from point A to point B. So, and that's something that I do and try and put on my blog as well. I kind of try and put that kind of practical information on there so people know, do I need change? How much is it going to cost? Where do I go? So I say do a bit of research, and that will definitely kind of ease any kind of worries that you've got about when you arrive. And I mean, it sounds so simple, but I just say to kind of go. In terms of places like Southeast Asia, people it can seem quite daunting to people. It's obviously Asia, it's quite far away, but they're so set up for backpackers and they're so set up for people visiting that it's pretty easy, you know, and you meet other people and everyone around you is very nice and kind of helpful, that it makes the trip a lot easier. And I think you probably do it and then realize, like, why was I worrying so much for this long?
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think, you know, just giving it a go, because you don't know how you're going to feel, and it can change from destination to destination as well. Yeah. So you might find yourself feeling really comfortable somewhere and then you go somewhere else and maybe it wasn't quite for you. And I think you just got to give these things a go, but with a little bit of research. I'm the same about finding where to travel, because I think the worst thing is, particularly if you're on a budget, if you've not done your research and you arrive in country and you're just a bit freaked out about the public transport system, you end up getting in a taxi, which is invariably the most expensive way to travel.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you've blown half your budget, which you could spend on the local tipple, for example, which is how I like to spend my budget.
Yeah.
Just getting a taxi. I had an absolute fail in Prague. We got off the overnight train at 6 a.m. and I was shat. I hadn't slept at all. And we'd kind of said, because it was 6 a.m, we were like, we will get a taxi, but we'd not really researched about how much that would cost. And Prague taxi drivers can be a little bit saucy with their prices if they know you're a tourist. Yeah. And so we paid the money and we got to the hotel and we saw a board up where they were like, this is the taxi cost, like, to the train station. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe. I mean, luckily in Prague, things are pretty cheap. So it wasn't horrendous, but it was a lesson that I'm never going to repeat that again, because I was like, I just felt so ripped off.
Yeah, we did the exact same thing when we arrived in Vilnius last year. I did a girls' trip and it was snowing and we got in a taxi, and I swear that I'd read, you know, that it was like €3 or something, and the taxi meter's going up and it's going up and up, and in the end it cost us like €12, which between 5 of us was nothing. But I was just like, I swear I read this was €3. And then I sound like I'm like being really tight because I'm like, I swear they said it's supposed to be €3, not €3 each. But then so obviously we paid it and it was fine because it was €3 each. But then when we got into the hostel and then we were arranging our taxi back to the airport, she was like, it'll be €3. And I was like, I knew that. And again, it's just the point of it that you just think, I just got so ripped off there.
Yeah, it happens quite a lot in Italy as well.
Okay.
So we got taxis from different places when we travelled a little bit around Italy earlier this year, and particularly in Naples. So like the biggest tip is often, like, if you can pre-arrange, if taxi is the only option, if you can pre-arrange it with your hotel to book it, they're not going to rip off the hotel doing it.
Yeah.
But they might rip off you. And so we did that when we were arriving into Naples and then going back to the airport. And that sorted us out. We'd heard some real horror stories about and then charging you an extra €5 to take your case out of the back of the car, all the tricks. And so it's well worth having a good read round, because there's plenty of people that will tell you their experience, their horror stories of public transport and taxis in other countries. Yeah, we've all got one.
I know, but again, that's kind of also, as long as you don't get ripped off too much and it doesn't kind of dent into your life too much, it's all kind of, it's definitely lessons, you know, you definitely learn from that one time, and then it probably will happen again, but you kind of hope that it won't happen as much in the future.
Sometimes you just want to take the taxi because you're knackered, you've had a long flight and you're just like, okay, fine, like, I know that this is going to cost money. But there are lots of places. I mean, I've been doing a lot of traveling around Europe, and invariably they've got better transport systems than we have. Like the Paris Metro is awesome. The U-Bahn and S-Bahn in Berlin is just absolutely phenomenal. The stereotype of German efficiency is never more true than the S-Bahn and the U-Bahn.
Oh, really?
By the second those trains arrive.
Wow.
And it is phenomenal and brilliant. So, there's definitely good countries to kind of explore their public transport system on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, just being prepared.
Scout's honour. Definitely be prepared is a good all-round tip. So I'm going to let you go because you've got a pack for your awesome festival, which I am just going to be following like a hawk on your social media over the weekend.
I'll be uploading.
Because it sounds phenomenal. But before we go, I've been asking all of my guests on the podcast to tell me a little bit about, what does travel mean to you?
So to me, it's just that kind of freedom of just being able to do whatever you want, really. And again, whether it's, a long, a few month backpacking trip or just trip, or it's just a weekend trip, it just kind of, you're just open to doing whatever you want within those days that you've got in one place. And also just realizing like how big the world is. And, there's so much out there and there's so many different people out there, and just really kind of like broadening like my knowledge of the world and opening my eyes. And just being able to experience the world. And like, I love that I can just look at a map and there are some places where I know exactly what's going on right at that point, in that map right now, because I've been there. And for me, it's just amazing.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I want to go on a trip now, to be honest. I'm going to pack my bags and go. So thank you so much for being on the podcast, Ellie. If people want to follow along your adventures, where can people find you on the internet?
Okay, so my blog is www.thewanderingquinn.com, and my Instagram is @thewanderingquinn. My Facebook is The Wandering Quinn, and my Twitter, because of the character length, is wandering, so @wandering_Quinn.
Fab, and we'll put all of the links to Ellie's social media and website in the show notes, so you'll be able to follow along. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of The Travelust, and I hope we've managed to inspire you to think about your next trip. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you gave it a little review and rating on iTunes or your podcast player of choice, so even more people can find their inner travel lust. Until next time, have a safe journey.